Hi, I'm Jessica from the WVU Family Nutrition Program, and I'm here today to talk to you about mushrooms. Super helpful food, full of nutrients, with antioxidants to help our immune systems fight inflammation and infection. So today we're going to build a dry soup mix that you could have on hand in your pantry to add a can of broth to and have as a warm soup on a cold day. We're going to start with a dry mushroom, but you could also build the soup off of a fresh mushroom, and we'll do that a little later in the video. So when you work with a dry mushroom, you're going to want to inspect and trim the ends just as you would trim a stem on a fresh mushroom, because there may be a little of the growing substrate attached to the bottom. If I'm going to make one serving, then I'm going to go with a half a teaspoon of chive, a quarter teaspoon of the onion flake and the celery flake, and a 1/16 of a teaspoon of the garlic powder. If you wanted to build something that you could keep on hand, then you might start with an ounce of dry mushrooms and use a little bit more of those seasonings. That would be 1.5 teaspoons of dry chive, 3/4 of a teaspoon of onion powder, 3/4 of a teaspoon of celery flake, and 3/16 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. Now we're ready to build our soup. I have a pan on about medium heat. I'm going to add just a little bit of fat. This could be a teaspoon of olive oil or just a sliver of butter if you're going to saute some fresh mushrooms for your soup. That's starting to bubble and warm up, so I can add some fresh mushroom. And I'm just going to give those a quick saute. Start bringing out their flavors and reducing. Because I have dry fresh mushroom soup on hand, I'm going to add this to my broth too. Just push those around the pan a little bit. The heat and a little bit of oil will start making the spices smell delicious. Fill your kitchen with the aromatic flavors and start to prepare them for boiling in some broth. For my soup today, I've chose a low sodium chicken broth, and that way I can control how much salt is in the soup. You notice there's no salt or pepper in my seasoning mix. You want to add that in to your tastes and flavors. Oh, that smells amazing. Because I used both fresh and dry mushroom mix, I'm using 2 cans of broth. For 1/2 cup of the dry mushroom mix, you're going to use 1 can of broth. Now, you're going to let this simmer on the stove for about 15 minutes. If you're using dry mushrooms, until they're tender. If you're using fresh mushrooms, until they have the bite that you want. Not all the way cooked mushy, but soft enough to be in a soup. If you wanted to make a heartier meal out of this, you could add a whole grain, maybe a pasta or a brown rice or even a quinoa. And if you wanted something more like a stew, any lean protein works. Chicken, lean beef, or even some beans. For an even heartier winter day treat, I'm going to add some whole grain rice, some brown rice to my soup today. Because I'm working with an instant rice, it's not going to need to cook as long. As you add your whole grain, you're going to want to follow that grain's cooking instructions. The instructions on the back of the pasta bag, or the rice bag, or in this case, the box of instant rice. This is not going to take as long as a dry rice would. A dry rice would take about 20 minutes. Because I did a double batch of broth, 2 cans of broth and 2 of the servings of mushrooms, I'm going to put a 1/4 cup of rice. Now that the rice is in, we'll need to cover and simmer for a few minutes so that the mushrooms and the rice can get tender. To this soup, in addition to your whole grains or lean proteins, you could add any vegetables you enjoy. Celery, carrots, cabbage, they would all taste delicious in this soup. I think my favorite would be some hot peppers. Now that our soup has been simmering long enough for our whole grains to get tender, we're ready to serve. Beautiful scoop. oyster mushrooms, white button mushrooms, which are actually cremini mushrooms, low sodium chicken broth, brown rice, and some seasonings. You can salt and pepper this to taste or eat it just as it is. If you'd like more healthy recipes, check out the WVU Family Nutrition Program Facebook page or YouTube channel. Enjoy. That's hot. That's really hot.